Hi everyone, nice to see you all again. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to make a video about vocabulary and how I do or don't study it. To skip right to the conclusion, I actually don't study vocabulary per se. I don't gather vocabulary together in one place. I don't study it. I don't spend time studying it at all. Having said that, obviously I'm very well aware of the fact that expanding our vocabularies is one of the most important things we have to do when we learn any foreign language. So I'd like to talk a little bit today about what exactly my attitude is to this particular topic. This is something that I'm sure I'll talk about a bit more in other videos, but when I take notes, and I think anybody learning any language is going to have to take the language that they want to learn, the language that they want to acquire, and store it, put it down on paper in one fashion or another. I, like many other people, take very extensive notes. If you want to acquire language really extensively, deeply, then you're going to have to take the pieces of language that you're interested in and put them down on paper, in some sort of file, in some sort of document in one fashion or another. I'm sure every serious language student does that. When I say that I don't study vocabulary, that I do not think about vocabulary per se, what I mean is that everything is mixed together in my notes. So to give you a concrete example, let's say I'm watching a film in a foreign language, in Russian, and I've decided that I want to take extensive notes pertaining to the language that I encounter in that film. When I do that, I write everything down all together. I take as much language as I think I need to make the chunk of language in question comprehensible to me, the future me, when I go back over that stuff in a month's time, 2 months' time, 6 months' time, 2 years' time, whenever I happen to be revising it in the future. All of this stuff at one level of analysis is jumbled together in the sense that you might have a sentence, then a word, then a fragment, then a collocation, then another sentence. But it's coherent in the sense that I'm following something through, a video, a TV program, whatever it may be, and that provides me with a context that allows me to make sense of these smaller chunks of languages that I'm taking. So when I'm in the mood to revise or to rehearse or to go back through the chunks of language that I've taken, and that's a very big and important fraction of my language study process. When I'm in the mood to do that, to go back through the notes that I've taken, I just go through them. I don't focus on vocabulary, I just go through all the language. I'll give you a concrete example. There's a video on Netflix, Army of the Dead. It's this zombies in Las Vegas sort of horror action film by Zack Snyder, right? When I go through the notes that I took watching that in Russian, I just go through the whole lot and I re-encounter whatever I encountered the first time I went through it. Of course, it's important to me to improve my vocabulary, but I do not work on vocabulary per se. I just make an effort to take hundreds of little snapshots of those pieces of the language that I'm interested in, and I revisit them later on. I don't see vocabulary as being something in and of itself to work on when you're studying a language. One of the great problems in our attempts to learn vocabulary is that words are actually extremely difficult to develop a sophisticated understanding of. Even relatively trivial seeming words can be complex. We don't know how the natives tend to use them. We don't know what sentence patterns they tend to be used in. We don't know what collocations they tend to be used in. We don't know what exactly the scope of meaning of a given word is. And the way that I try and deal with that, and I think this is an insight that many people will stumble across sooner or later, the way that I try to deal with that is to take words in context. I generally do not write down any specific word by itself unless it is a word that can be understood to some extent or to a significant extent without any particular context. Now, this is something I want to talk about in other videos, but for example, if you take the word electron, that word is probably going to mean pretty much the same thing in every language. What I mean is that whatever the word for electron is in Mongolian, the word electron is probably going to fit into the language in pretty much the same way that the word electron fits into the English language. That is because we are talking about a sort of technical term, if you like, a term that's used in the sciences and that has a relatively precise meaning. Most words are not like that. Most words are much harder to pin down. Take, for example, the relatively trivial English word law. Law can mean a specific law, a specific part of the legal system of a given country, but it can also mean a subject that you study at university. He is studying law. She was studying law, right? Now, in English, we use the same word, but in other languages, they won't necessarily do that. If you want to say a law, a piece of legislation, a piece of, part of the legal system in any given country that we have to abide by, then it's a zakon. But if you want to say law, as in I am studying law, then it's prava, which is the same word in Russian as the word right, to have the right to do something, right, in that sense. And it also means right, as in the opposite of left, but we'll ignore that at the moment. So it's no good just writing down one of those two Russian words and writing law, right, in English, because you won't know what shade of meaning is being captured by that Russian word. So that is one simple and straightforward example of a much broader problem. It's very difficult for us to learn really what words mean, what pieces of language mean, and to comprehend them and acquire them accurately. And that's why you have to take chunks of stuff. And I think it's that recognition of the fact that words are very difficult to comprehend out of context that has led me to not having a vocabulary study as a specific area of study at all. I just acquire as much as I can at the same time. Like I said, words, phrases, collocations, sentence patterns, bits of grammar, everything's jumbled together. So I'm not denigrating the importance of vocabulary in the slightest. I'm just saying that I have a certain approach to studying it. So yes, vocabulary per se is not something that I study. Though I stress, I do attach huge importance to it. I just don't isolate it within my language studies. I don't think of it as being a separate problem. I would say, because I spent so much time studying Russian, and because Russian is a language that is very heavily inflected, in which nouns and verbs and adjectives are constantly changing their forms, just learning a new adjective in Russian and thinking that you're going to be able to use it, or learning a new noun and thinking that you're going to be able to use it in the early stages of your studies. That sort of attitude is the type of thing that's going to lead you into error. You have to be able to use the vocabulary you learn. Let's stick with adjectives and nouns for now. You have to be able to use these words in all their many forms, in all the different Russian cases, and in 3 different genders. And I think that that's something that pushed me very strongly in the direction of not thinking about individual words, in the direction of only thinking about words in context, in real chunks and fragments of language. And that is something that has stayed with me. And it is a principle, I suppose, that I now apply to Chinese as well, which is a very different language, but nonetheless, I think the habits I got into with Russian are generally applicable to any language. Take chunks. Take chunks if you can. Don't take individual words unless you're really going to be able to figure out where to use them quite easily. Again, electron is quite a good example. A word like planet is probably a word that's going to be quite comprehensible, quite usable in any language, because generally we know what we're talking about when we say planet, right? It is a fairly discrete, clear, obvious type of entity that can't really be confused with anything else. Not every word is like that. Many words are not like that. Many words have many different meanings, and they have shades of meanings that cannot be reconstructed later on if you re-encounter them in your notes as isolated elements that are not juxtaposed with anything else. And I would say the same thing about grammar as well, actually. Once you've got some understanding of the basic, most important, most fundamental grammar that is used in a language, you should be acquiring most of your grammar in the same way, by encountering chunks of language, writing them down, going through them, rehearsing them, and not through deliberate grammar study, though that is something that I'll talk about in other videos too. Anyway, I've started to ramble a little bit, which is what happens when you put me in front of a camera and tell me to talk about language study or about language. That is pretty much it for today. It's a topic that's often addressed. I just wanted to quickly deliver unto you my version of vocabulary study, so to speak. So that's it for today. Thanks very much for tuning in. Of course, I'd be happy to address any questions in the comments below if anyone has any. Thanks very much. I appreciate it. I'll see you again next time. Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye.